The galaxy stood on a knife's edge. For centuries, the Talani Dominion and the Valari sovereignty had been locked in a cold war, two vast ancient civilizations with incompatible ideologies. The Talani, proud and militaristic, valued strength, conquest, and order. The Valari, elegant and diplomatic, stood for harmony, knowledge, and cultural preservation. Dozens of proxy wars had scarred neutral worlds, and hundreds of species lived in constant dread of being caught in the crossfire should open war erupt again. Humanity, a young entrant to the galactic stage, had remained largely unnoticed. Though they had advanced quickly, faster than many believed possible, they were still dismissed by the older civilizations as reckless, impulsive, and ultimately insignificant. Humans held no seats in the Galactic Council. Their influence was limited to trade lanes and border colonies, and their diplomats were barely tolerated at interstellar events. But that was about to change. In a last-ditch effort to avert a new galactic war, a high-stakes peace summit was convened on the neutral moon of Xeranthia, a rare jewel of diplomacy maintained by independent mediators. It was here, beneath the towering crystal domes and shimmering blue skies, that the leaders of the Talani and Valari were to meet. Trust was low, security was high. Everyone knew one wrong move could doom the entire negotiation. Among the countless security personnel and delegates was Commander James Reeve, a decorated officer from Earth's United Coalition. He had been assigned as a neutral security advisor, mostly a symbolic gesture. The humans weren't important enough to be decision-makers, but having one on the security team helped show that the summit was truly pan-species in nature. Commander Reeve took his duties seriously, though he sensed the sideways glances from the more experienced alien staff. "Why is a human even here?" some whispered. "He's just a political token." Still, he watched. He listened. And most of all, he prepared. Queen Cirella of Valar, the youngest monarch in her line, arrived draped in flowing fabrics of living silk and flanked by her honor guard. Unlike many of her advisors, she had studied human history. She found it fascinating, chaotic, bloody, but filled with an indomitable will to survive. She had personally requested that Reeve be briefed on her security protocols. It was a small gesture, but one Reeve noted. Behind the scenes, whispers circulated. Intelligence reports hinted at an attempt to derail the summit. Some said it would be a cyber attack, others suspected an assassination, but no one could confirm who or how. Paranoia rippled through the corridors of the summit dome. Every glance felt weighted, every movement suspicious, and then the ceremony began. Under the stained glass dome of the grand atrium, diplomats, nobles, and envoys gathered in silence as Queen Cirella stepped forward to address the assembly. Her voice, soft yet commanding, echoed across the chamber as she called for reconciliation and the hope of peace. In that moment, no one realized history was holding its breath, and no one, not even Reeve, could know how quickly everything was about to change. The grand ceremony was underway. The light streaming through the crystal dome of the grand atrium bathed the gathering in a dazzling array of colors. Queen Cirella of Valar, resplendent in her ceremonial attire, stood at the center of the stage. Her voice rang out, steady and clear, calling for an end to centuries of conflict between the Talani Dominion and the Valari sovereignty. For the first time in decades, it seemed like there might be hope for peace. Diplomats, political leaders, and military commanders from dozens of star systems hung on her every word. Among them was Commander James Reeve, standing at the edge of the stage, his posture rigid and focused. As the human security liaison to the summit, his task was simple: provide protection and ensure that the talks went smoothly. But despite his calm exterior, his instincts were on high alert. The reports of a possible assassination attempt still weighed heavily on his mind. Security was tight, but Reeve knew all too well that no plan was perfect, especially with so many powerful forces with a vested interest in seeing the summit fail. The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone could sense it. The galaxy's fragile hope for peace hung by a thread, and no one was sure who among the powerful empires might shatter it first. As Queen Sorella continued her speech, Reeve scanned the room, noting every subtle movement, every whispered conversation, every change in the air. He'd been a soldier long enough to know when something was wrong. The moment came without warning. A shrill noise cut through the air, an unmistakable sound of an energy bow being drawn. Time seemed to slow as Reeve's heart raced. He didn't need to see the threat to know what was coming. The crowd reacted with a collective gasp, and before anyone could make sense of the situation, the first volley of plasma arrows sliced through the air. They were sharp, glowing with a menacing energy, designed to pierce even the most advanced armor. There was no mistaking their target, Queen Sorella herself. Sorella, caught off guard, froze as the deadly projectiles arced toward her. Her bodyguards rushed to her side, but they were too far away. The arrows were aimed with precision and speed, meant to end the peace negotiations before they even began. But Commander Reeve acted without hesitation. In one swift motion, he lunged forward, his body flying through the air. His military training kicked in, and he knew there was no time to think. As the first of the arrows closed in on Sorella, Reeve positioned himself between her and the deadly projectiles. The arrows struck with brutal force, embedding themselves in his chest and shoulder, sending shockwaves of agony through his body. He collapsed to the ground, his vision swimming, but in that fleeting moment, he had done what no one else could. He had saved the Queen. The chaos erupted in the atrium. Guards flooded the stage, weapons raised, and the assassins, hidden among the crowd, were quickly neutralized. Queen Sorella was safe, but Commander Reeve lay motionless, blood pooling beneath him. The room was silent, the weight of the moment sinking in. He had given everything to protect a monarch of another species, and in doing so had forever changed the course of galactic history. The crowd was in shock. No one had expected this. A human, a lowly human, had taken the arrows meant for a queen, and in doing so had altered the fate of the galaxy. The news spread like wildfire. In the moments after the assassination attempt was thwarted, the galaxy held its breath. Commander James Reeve, a mere human security officer, had thrown himself in front of Queen Sorella of Valar to absorb the plasma, arrows meant for her. He lay unconscious, grievously wounded, but his selflessness had shocked the universe. The initial reports of the assassination attempt went unnoticed in the media, as the story quickly shifted from a failed assassination to the miraculous act of a human saving a queen. At first, there was confusion, disbelief. The older civilizations, accustomed to their grand, intricate systems of politics, military might and diplomacy, couldn't fathom what had just transpired. The Valari, though shaken, were swift in their gratitude. Queen Sorella, who had nearly lost her life, personally, thanked Reeve's team for their professionalism. She called the Human Security Officers Act a gesture of unparalleled bravery, and though she had no obligations to do so, she ordered the best medical treatment for him. Across the galaxy, the implications of the incident began to unfold. For the Valari sovereignty, Reeve's actions transcended political significance. The Queen had survived, and peace was still a possibility. This was the public face of the event. Behind the scenes, however, Reeve's sacrifice carried a weight that couldn't be ignored. His willingness to die for someone of another species, especially one with whom humanity had no formal alliance, opened a new dialogue about the potential role of Earth in galactic politics. The Valari now saw humanity in a new light, not as an insignificant species, but as one with the courage and resolve to change the galaxy's course. Meanwhile, the Talani Dominion, the Valari's arch-rivals, viewed Reeve's actions with suspicion. Their leaders were quick to claim that the humans' intervention had been a calculated maneuver, a staged show of heroism meant to shift the political balance in favor of the Valari. The Talani were not known for their empathy, and they had no interest in sharing a galaxy with an upstart species like humanity. Still, the failed assassination attempt had left them with a sense of unease. They had no love for the Valari, but They feared the implications of a growing human influence. Back on Earth, the news of Reeve's heroism caused a wave of national pride. Humans, often seen as newcomers to the galactic community, suddenly became a topic of discussion in every corner of the galaxy. From the Outer Rim colonies to the gleaming spires of galactic capital worlds, people were talking about the human who saved an alien queen. It was a moment that bridged the divide between species, and many on Earth began to feel a deep sense of unity, not only with their own kind, but with the galaxy at large. But it was in the aftermath that the true magnitude of Reeve's sacrifice began to be understood. As the peace talks resumed, Reeve remained in critical condition. He had survived, but the damage done by the plasma arrows was severe. The doctors were uncertain if he would fully recover, but his name was already being whispered as a symbol of hope. Diplomats who had previously dismissed humanity as inconsequential now looked at Earth as a potential ally. The summit had not only survived, it had shifted, and for the first time in centuries, the balance of galactic power was changing. Queen Sirella, deeply moved by Reeve's actions, made a decision that would echo across history. She invited humanity to participate in the next stage of negotiations, not as bystanders, but as active participants. Reeve's act had saved her life, and in turn, she would ensure that humanity would no longer be sidelined in the complex web of galactic diplomacy. Years passed, but the story of Commander James Reeve's selfless act continued to resonate across the galaxy. In the wake of the failed assassination attempt and the subsequent peace talks, the political landscape shifted in ways no one could have predicted. Commander Reeve had been gravely injured, but he survived, though never without the scars, both physical and emotional. The galaxy, however, would not forget him. His decision to sacrifice himself to save Queen Sirella, despite the personal risk, had irrevocably altered the path of galactic history. As the years unfolded, the Talani Dominion and the Valari sovereignty were able to establish a fragile peace, thanks in part to the unexpected intervention of a human, a species once regarded as a curiosity, now considered essential in maintaining the delicate balance of power. Humanity, initially seen as insignificant, was invited to join the galactic political stage. Earth was granted a seat at the table in diplomatic negotiations, something previously unthinkable. But it wasn't just the political implications of Reeve's actions that were felt. His sacrifice had sparked a philosophical and cultural shift across the galaxy. Species that had once viewed humans as impulsive and unreliable now admired them for their courage, honor, and willingness to stand by their convictions. The concept of sacrifice, of putting the welfare of others above oneself, began to spread like wildfire through diplomatic and military circles. It became a new standard, one that would shape how negotiations were approached and how alliances were formed. Queen Sirella, deeply moved by Reeve's actions, became an outspoken advocate for human inclusion in galactic affairs. The Valari sovereignty's invitation to humanity to participate in negotiations was the first step. Soon, other factions followed suit. Humanity's influence grew with every passing year. Where once they had been relegated to the fringes, they now played a pivotal role in keeping the peace. As for Reeve, he was forever changed. He was no longer just a soldier or a mere security officer. He was a symbol of humanity's resilience and determination. Though his injuries never fully healed, he was honored and celebrated in every corner of the galaxy. Monuments were erected in his name, but he was never comfortable with the attention. He often humbly deflected praise, insisting that his actions were simply those of a soldier doing his duty. Still, the memory of that day lived on. In a quiet ceremony on Xeranthia, the moon where it all began, a towering bronze statue of Reeve was unveiled. It depicted him mid-flight, his body shielded in front of the Queen, the plasma arrows frozen in mid-air. The monument was a reminder not only of Reeve's sacrifice, but of the moment that changed everything. The galaxy stood united in the knowledge that peace was not just a matter of negotiation, but of courage and selflessness. Reeve, now an ambassador of Earth, had seen his galaxy transformed. Humanity's seat at the table was no longer symbolic. it was earned. Though the threats of war and division still loomed on the horizon, the ripple effect of Reeves' actions ensured that humanity was no longer just a footnote in the galactic narrative. They were players in the grand game, their contributions invaluable. And as Reeves stood before the new monument, looking out at the stars, he knew his story was no longer just his own. It was part of the galaxy's history. The moment he took arrows meant for a queen had set the stage for humanity's rise, altering the course of galactic civilization forever.